Hey guys, my name's Jeff, and today I'm going to try to teach you how to play a board game. Container, the board game. 10th Anniversary Jumbo Edition from Mercury Games. So this is a great game. It can be a little confusing to new players at first, so I thought I'd try my hand at an instructional video. I'm probably not going to be showing you the game in the typical way people teach games. I won't be going through the setup or the specifics right away. I'm going to teach it in kind of the way that I think I would have learned it the quickest. So I'll try to keep it under 15 minutes and hopefully cover everything you need to know to play. Ready, go! Container is a game for 3 to 5 players in which each player controls a shipping company. You'll all be buying and selling containers to try to make all of the monies. There's a few different ways to do that. Build machines that make containers you can sell to other players. Building warehouses so you can buy containers from other players and then sell those to boats. And then sending your own boat around to other players' harbors, buying the containers they have for sale, taking those containers to an island where they get auctioned off. And then at the end of the game, you'll get money for all the containers you have on the foreign island. These are the containers you'll be buying and selling throughout the game. There's 5 different colors, and when 2 of these 5 piles are depleted, that'll trigger the end of the game. At that point, all players will cash in the containers at the foreign island, tally up how much money they have, and the player with the most money wins. So we'll just take a quick look at a few of the other important components in the game. So these are the machines that are necessary for manufacturing the 5 colors of containers. These are the warehouses needed for storing containers, the boats used to ship containers, and individual player boards. The foreign island board really just acts as an auction location and endgame scoring storage area. This is the investment bank board, and it's not too complicated, but we can come back to it later. In Container, players can take 2 actions on their turn, but before I go into the actions and how each of them work, I just want to talk a little bit about the layout of the personal player boards. It can look a little confusing, but it's really straightforward. It's kind of divided into 2 sections. The bottom half is the factory area, and then there's the harborfront area at the top. We'll start with the factory area. So this is where you're going to be paying to build machines in the circles along the bottom, which will allow you to take actions to produce containers that other players can then buy from you. The price that other players pay you for those containers is related to which box you put those containers in. That's why those numbers are upside down and a little larger, so other players can read them from across the table. The circles at the bottom that you're going to be building your machines in will also have a little white number indicating how much each machine costs to build as you build from left to right. So that's it for the bottom half of the board. Harborfront area works in a similar fashion. So you'll be buying warehouses so that you have storage capacity, then buying containers from other players' factory area, pricing them however you want. Again, it's a similar structure. It's not related to where the warehouses are. You can put them wherever you want. And the warehouse squares have the price in the bottom left corner as well. The bottom right section of your board is your scoring card area, where you'll keep your secret hidden scoring scheme. So at the start of the game, everybody is given one of these 5 cards, and it's kept secret, and it just indicates at the end of the game how much each color is going to be worth for you. So in this case, at the end of the game, purple containers are going to be worth $10 each. There are a couple other rules regarding game end scoring that are very important, but I'll come back to them later in the video. So for now that we've covered the layout of the personal player boards, let's go through the list of 5 actions that a player can take on their turn. A player can take 2 actions. The first one is buy a warehouse or buy a machine. So the cost to do so is going to be listed in the next available space, and that amount is paid to the bank. And that's not to the investment bank, just the general supply. The only thing to keep in mind when building a machine is that you can't build a machine of the same color of a machine you already have. When you build a warehouse or a machine, you're going to be increasing the capacity you have to hold containers in those 2 separate areas of your boards. So on the factory side of your board, for every machine you own, you can hold 2 containers. On the harborfront side of the board, for every warehouse you own, you can store 1 container. The next action players can take is to buy containers from other players' factory area for their own harborfront area. You cannot hold more containers than the number of warehouses, and whenever you do buy containers from another player for your harborfront area, that is the time when you can not only price those containers, but rearrange the price for all other containers you might have already had there. The third action a player can take is to produce containers with their machines for their factory store area. So this action can only be taken once per turn, and every time you have to pay $1 to the union boss, who is the player to your right. When you produce containers, you must try to produce all possible containers, meaning each of your machines will want to produce one container of that type. When you do produce containers, similarly to the warehouses, you can not only price the new containers, but rearrange the prices for any containers you already had in your factory store area. Remember, your capacity for storage is 2 containers for each machine you have built. If you were to try to build more containers than you can store, you'll have to choose which ones you produce and which ones you don't. The last action you can take is to sail the ship. So ships can only ever really be at one of 2 places, really. They can be at open sea, which is just exposed tabletop, or they can be at one of the board locations, so another player's harbor, or the foreign island, or the investment bank. If you're ever moving from one location to another, you have to move through open sea first. So if your ship is in another player's harbor, you'll need to take a move action to go to open sea, and then a move action to get to the next location you want to go to. When you take the sail the ship action and move your ship into another player's harbor, you'll be given a free purchase action to buy containers that are available in that player's harborfront area. This is actually the only way that you can buy containers in another player's harborfront area. If you're already docked in another player's harbor and you want to buy containers from their harborfront, you would still technically have to take a sail the ship action and just not move your ship, so that your sail the ship action ends in their harbor and you'd be given a free purchase action. If you end your sail the ship action in open sea space, nothing happens. If you end your sail the ship action at the foreign island, that'll immediately cause a blind auction for all the containers on your ship, and it'll immediately end your turn. So now we'll talk about how the auctions work. So when you take a sail action and end at the foreign island, all the other players will secretly select currency cards and all simultaneously reveal the bids that they've put forward for the containers on your ship. The highest bidder will get the containers as long as you're okay selling to that player for that amount of money. If you're okay with accepting that bid, then you'll get their bid, and then you'll also get the same amount of money from the general supply, which represents the government. It's a government subsidy, so they match the highest bidder. If you're not okay with what the highest bid is once the bids are revealed, you do have the option to reject all those bids and buy the containers yourself. But you'll have to pay the same amount as the highest bid, and you won't be receiving a government subsidy in that case. You'll just pay the cost, and then your area of the foreign island will get the containers. There is also a bluffing aspect to the auctions. So at the start of the game, each player is given $20 worth of currency cards, but they're also given 2 zero-value cards, which players can use during the auction to try to drive other players' bids up. The last action a player can take is to call the broker, and this relates specifically to the investment bank board. So on the investment bank board, there are 3 buildings representing 3 different brokers. On the right side of the broker building will be a certain amount of cash, and on the left side of the building will be a certain number of containers. As an action, players can call the broker, which basically means they can decide to initiate an auction on one of those 6 areas. They take the call the broker card with the arrow on it and point it towards whatever they'd like to start an auction for. Then they take the other card, the bid card, and put it next to their own personal player board with their bid face up so that all the other players can see. This is now an open auction that all players can bid on their turn if they so choose. If a player takes the call the broker action and there's already an auction taking place, that player is basically just outbidding the current player and taking the bid card in front of them. The auction continues this way until a player starts their turn with the bid card still in front of them. If they do that, they've won the auction. At this point, they would take the containers they were bidding on and put them in the warehouse area of the investment bank board. This essentially serves as a warehouse for that player, but they'll need to bring their ship there to pick up the containers. They would then pay the winning bid to the investment bank, dollar by dollar, starting with the first building, then the second, then the third, then the first, and so on until the entire bid has been spread among the 3 broker buildings. They would then put the bid card back in front of the investment bank board, for any other player to start a new auction. If the player had decided to bid on currency on the right side of the board, they would be bidding in containers. They can use containers in their factory area or in their harborfront area. But when they take the bid card next to their personal board, they'll have to put the containers on the appropriate side of the bid card to remember where those containers came from. This is important in case they're outbid by another player, so that they know where to put those containers back. If you do happen to be outbid by another player, you have to put the container back on the same side of the board that it came from, but you are able to reprice the container at that point. The auction continues this way, but with bidding containers instead of cash. The containers are all a value of 1, so most containers bid will win the auction whenever a player starts their turn with the bid card still in front of them. In that case, they would distribute their winning bid of containers the same way they distributed money, but on the left side of the board, starting with the first broker building, then the second, then the third, and so on until all the containers have been spread among the broker buildings. Then they would take the cash they had won directly into their supply. They don't need to put that in the warehouse area of the investment bank board. So those are all the normal actions a player can take on their turn, but there are also 2 pre-turn actions that all players must do before they start their turn. So one of them is to check to see if they've won an auction, and if they have, they can pay the investment bank their bid and take their prize. The other is to pay interest on any loan cards they might have, and I'll explain loan cards now. At any time, including not on their turn, a player can decide to take a loan from the investment bank. All they have to do is take a loan card, which will also give them $10. But as long as they have that loan card in front of them, at the start of every turn, they'll need to pay $1 interest to the investment bank. A player can also take a second loan out, but that's the maximum they can take, and they'll need to pay interest on both loans at the start of every turn. If a player ever can't afford to pay the interest on their loans at the start of their turn, they're considered to be in default. So at that time, the investment bank will start to take containers from that player. They'll start by trying to take it from the foreign island, and then in sequential order, if there's none at the foreign island, they'll try the ship, and then the investment bank board harbor, and then that player's individual harbor store, and then their factory store. The investment bank will take 1 container for every $1 of interest owed, and the containers and currency taken by the investment bank are distributed evenly among the brokers in the same fashion as the winning bids in the auctions. A player can get rid of a loan card by paying the $10 that they owe on their turn, but they have to do it after they've already paid the interest for that loan. Okay, so endgame scoring. So on each individual player's secret scoring card, every color of container is given a money value, except for one that's given two values, 5 and 10, separated by a slash. What that means is, if at the end of the game, if you have at least one of each of the colors on the island, then the higher number kicks in. That color is worth 10. If you don't have one of each of the colors, then that color is just worth 5. The other thing to know for endgame scoring is that whatever color of container you have the most of at the island at the end of the game, that actually gets thrown away, so you don't get to score those containers. If 2 colors are tied for most containers, you can choose which one you get rid of. Unless one of them is the 5/10 color, then that has to be the color you get rid of. Whatever's left after that, each player will trade them in for their cash value and count up all their money. The players will also get $2 for every container they have left in their harborfront store, $3 for every container left in their investment bank harbor, and $3 for every container they have left on their ship. If the player has any loan cards, they'll subtract $11 for every loan card that they still have in their hand. And that's the final scoring. If there's any ties, a player with the most containers in their factory store area would win. That's it, guys. That's the whole game. So hopefully that was concise and clear, and next time you get together with your friends to play, you can just jump straight into it rather than spending half an hour discussing things. So yeah, if you enjoyed that, let me know. Like, comment. I'm not sure. Maybe if that was helpful, maybe I'll do some more videos. And if it wasn't helpful, let me know, and I'll stop making these. Okay, I don't have much time to stay under 15 minutes. I have to say goodbye in the next 10 seconds. Bye.